Alright, so I had already made this video. Unfortunately, I didn't turn the volume on, so I'm going to try this again. This is basically accounting 101. We're going to walk through how to bookkeep, how to create a P&L, and how to do some forecasting. So without further ado, let's get started. Here I've added this pretty much comes with every standard, um, sorry, this comes with every standard bank statement that you get. And so initially when you want to do bookkeeping, you want to have the date, you want to have the activity description or some kind of description there. Sometimes you have the amount and the balance. Sometimes you don't have the balance, which is okay. In this, what I've done is sometimes, okay, this is very straightforward and easy to read. Sometimes they'll have things that aren't very clear to read or easy to understand. And so you need to actually research exactly what each of the accounts are saying. So here are the accounts. They're pretty easy, Starbucks, Walmart, Chevron. And so you know that from Amazon you're getting shopping or supplies. Sometimes it really depends. Maybe you're getting an item that needs to be capitalized. So just be careful. But with an amount like this, I don't think that needs to be capitalized there. And so you have all these accounts, and you sometimes also have accounts such as these. So rent payment might not be allowable expense. If this is for their personal housing, you cannot write this off towards the business. Maybe if you do work from home, there's a certain percentage that's allowable, but you can't write off your full place for your business. And if you're going to write any amount off, you need to do some kind of study or have some kind of backup for that. Another one here is really the local gym membership. This sounds more of a personal expense. There are some situations in which this may be allowable, but for the most part, not really a benefit to the business. Here, this is more a benefit for you as a person. Pandora subscription. This is probably not allowed. Disney Plus. There are rare cases in which some of these are allowed. So where they would be allowed is really around if, for example, I've done bookkeeping for a dentist. And so if the dentist has a waiting room and he has some things in there, those are okay. So that's really in the situation where some of these might be allowed. Pet store, pet care, that sounds like a personal expense. So food and beverages, it's only half of this can be taken for tax purposes. So just know the difference between tax accounting and regular accounting. So as for regular accounting, we're just going to write it as an expense. For tax, you're only allowed to take off 50%. And the mentality behind that is, if I go out with someone, it's me and someone else. And so the other person that I'm treating is going to write off 50%, or their percentage is going to be written off. The the amount that I consumed, that's not going to be written off for tax purposes. So that's where that 50% comes from. And as I go through this again, right, this is probably not allowed unless this is a home gym. So there's a lot of personal expenses in here. So what I did was I went in and just made them non-allowable, but I didn't go through the entire list. Um, you should go through the entire list and not just don't do what I'm doing here. The reason that I'm not going through the entire list is because it's not going to be good use of my time. I'm really just trying to do this for teaching purposes. This isn't an actual P&L that belongs to someone. And so one of the things that I've had to do here is really add an extra column here that says amount that shows the debits and credits. So all of the credits are negative numbers and all the debits are positive numbers. So for example, if you have money coming in, right, versus when you have money going out. And then I've recreated the balance here just to make sure that there was no variances. This is the delta. I also have this bank rec here. And so at the end of every month, depending on what's on the statement, you want to match whatever is in the bank with whatever your sheet says is in the bank. So if they match, it's 0, you're good. One of the other items I wanted to go through is really around credit cards. So when you have a credit card, there's two ways you can handle it. And so credit cards actually just almost like a transfer bucket. So for example here, let me just take a few of these items here. So I'll take these three. And I'm just going to take round numbers here. So let's just go off to the side. And so we spent $25 on Amazon, $25 on Starbucks, and $50 on Walmart. So basically, this amount is going to be, this amount is going to come out from the bank as cash. So we have our debits here and credits here. What happens when you use a credit card is actually this credit card replaces the cash. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the same situation, but now it's credit card. And then once you pay off the credit card, you're going to have an entry where it shows credit card and then it shows cash. And so this is going to be for 100 and this is going to be for 100. And so what essentially you're doing is you're debiting and crediting credit card. So in that case, when you debit and credit something, it nets out to 0. And so essentially, a credit card is just a transfer vehicle. You eventually have to pay that off, and so this is how you would recognize a transfer. The reason I go through this is because this is something I've seen folks struggle with. This concept when they're doing bookkeeping is, okay, so credit card expenses came in and they're double counting. The only way that you would do that is if you don't have the credit card details. And if you don't have the credit card details, you really need to get the credit card details because how do you know what you're writing off? If it's personal, if it's business, what is it? Um, you know, you, you don't want to classify something as an expense if you don't know and you can't verify that. And so that's really one part that I wanted to touch upon here. And so I went through, made sure that everything's flowing. And then the next thing that I did was I really made a pivot table. And fortunately, I feel like I'm going to have to do it again because uh, it's not going to make sense if I don't go through the steps with you. So I'm going to create another pivot table, new pivot table, and I'm going to, okay, so one of the things that I had to go through was really around why the pivot table wasn't working properly. And the reason why the pivot table wasn't working properly is because these dates here, they weren't formatted as dates. So when you select, so Control Shift down, you're going to go here and you're going to select dates. And I've already done that at this point. But initially, that's why the dates weren't working. And so I could get the dates here, but you see how months, days, and date have all three of them have populated? If you don't format the dates properly, what you get is just dates. And that is a huge list. I don't want that list. I want more of a consolidated version. So in this case, when you add months in here, it's so much easier to look at. So that's the first step, is really adding the dates. The next step is adding the amounts. So I initially had this amount line here, and so this has to be under values. I initially had this amount line here, and then what I did was I had this classification line here. And you see how everything is just together? I want it to look more like a P&L. So what I did was I actually added a column in there called P&L, and I put, because the way that everything is set up here, it's in alphabetical order. So what I did was I put one dot, and then I put income, and then I put two dot, and then I put expenses. The other thing that we want to take a look here is I don't want balances and I don't want non-allowable items. How do I filter those out? I'm going to go to row labels. So I'm going to select the header. So all four of these are really headers for the accounts underneath. So I'm going to select the header. I'm going to click this and I'm going to filter them out. If I want to, for example, remove an item from here, like for example, pet care, I select that pet care and then I go here and I can see all the accounts and then I can filter out pet care. One of the items that I also did was really around getting rid of some of these duplicate accounts. And this is going to happen to you. The reason that it happens is because there's spaces, and these spaces are interfering with how uh, Excel is recognizing all of these entries. And so I'm going to go back here and I'm going to see utilities. And so the issue with this month is in January. So I know somewhere in January, utilities, the word is not reflecting the rest of them. So what I'm going to do here is just see, I can see that this base here is causing an issue. So I have two options. Either I can just backspace, or I can copy this. I can select this. I can control find. I want to find these spaces and I want to replace them all. Okay, that's the second option. The third option, and the one that I did in the other file, was really around equal trim. And this gets rid of all of the spaces. So what I did was I did trim equals this, close, and then once I had all of them, then I copied this and I pasted all of those as values here. And then if I refresh this, sorry, this is the sheet that we're working in now. Sorry, I should have zoomed in. Let me zoom in for you. And so now what we have is we have utilities here in one line. Everything is flowing. Refresh. And I just want to check here that there's no other utilities that might be filtered out. And that's exactly what happened. Why? The reason why is because I didn't do the entire step. So because I wanted to save time, I put it in here and then I replace this. But this is not the same as this. So there might be a space in front of this, and there is. And so sometimes when you try to save time, it actually hurts you. And so what we're going to do is just copy these and paste them here. Now, when you paste, you always need to be careful because sometimes when you paste, I don't know why, some of the underwriting, some of the items that are filtered out, it's just going to override some of those. And I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is press Control G, go to Special, go to Visible Cells Only, click OK, and now I'm going to paste it in. And that's not going to work for multiple items. So what is the other option? You can come in here, you can press equals, you can press Control and click this, and now press Control and Enter. Yay! That's not going to work because this cell is actually referencing this cell. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stop being lazy and we're going to create this entire thing. So now what we're going to do is copy this, press here, and paste as values. And now everything is the same and we are not going to have this issue. One of the things that I didn't account for was these balances. And so you'll notice that the balances are not loading in, but again, being lazy here, but it's not going to harm this current sheet. So always be aware of what it is that you're doing and how it's going to affect some of the other items. So here now, what it's done, what happened? We filtered for utilities. So now what we need to do is add everything back in, and now our P&L is more or less ready. So income, expenses, and this grand total is gross profit. So sometimes, you have very limited data, just January, February, March, and April, and you want to see how you're going to do the rest of the year. And so in that case, what I've done is I've done a budget here, and I'm just going to do this just for the sake of teaching. So I wrote JAN and FAB. And when I select these and drag them down, all of these are going to update. Then what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this because that's not really relevant. Now what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I've referenced the pivot table over here. So reference the pivot table. That's essentially the next step. And then what I did was I took some growth rates. So revenue is going to grow 5%, expenses are going to grow 1.5%. Because realistically, new revenue coming in doesn't translate into a brand new expense. For example, with bookkeeping, if you are subscribed to QuickBooks, you're not going to have to subscribe to QuickBooks a second time just because you have a second client, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to, what I've essentially done here is to say, take this number and multiply it by the 5%, and then add this number back in. Now, the other way that you could do that is multiply it by 1.5%. So if I did 1.05 and then didn't add this number back, that's another way to that is actually incorrect. So 105%. And now these numbers should match. Nope, they don't match. So 21 and this, what is it doing? It's taking it forward. So I've written two formulas. The reason I've written two of them is because you can see that there's ups and downs here. So January's up, March is up, February and April are down. So what I did was I wanted to follow that same streamlined approach. So in this case, we have them coming up to 5,000 for November and back down to 2,400 for December. Sorry, yeah, 2,400. And then we have the expense line here, and the expense line I've done the other way. I like you having the tools and the different tools to be able to go through this. So what I've done here is we take April, we multiply it by that growth rate percentage, and then we add the April amount back in. That's another way to do it. And so we have this total here, we have that total here, and then we have profit. If you're going to follow a methodology, follow it to the end. Don't have one method here and another method here though. The reason I'm doing that is just to show you. But don't take this and run with it. Have one solid methodology. And if you're going to use, for example, two methods, that's fine. My personal model is measure twice, cut once. So make sure you know you're spot checking everything. And so really the next step here is now we have the numbers, we have the total, and I've already showed you how I've done that above, so I'm not going to do that down here. And now we have the forecast. So the other thing that I said was really around uh, there's merge and center. But with merge and center, for example, if I merge and center this, it's the same thing. But now if I try to move this around, we can't do that to a merge cell. And that gets kind of annoying very quickly to me. So what I did was let's just unmerge and center this and then press Control 1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to center across selection. Now if I do the same thing, for example, if I move this down or move this over, we're not having that issue, right? So I really prefer that methodology over anything else. One of the other things is if you don't, for example, if you write APRL, this entire thing's not going to work. It just recognizes dates in this particular, months in um, this particular format. So Excel is very, very finicky when it comes to formats. So you have to know exactly what you're doing. Another thing that I had to do is really around text to columns. So let me actually pull in and show you exactly what I did to get here. So first off, we're going to make everything white. It just looks cleaner. Zoom in, and I'm going to paste all this in. So as you can see, it's not, uh, actually that pasted in perfectly, which I did not want it to. So let me see if I can, interesting, copy. So sometimes it depends on how you copy the file. Right now I'm trying to copy the way that it initially showed up. So there's a number of ways it can show up, and it might just show up the way that it's shown up here, where everything is in one cell, and it's just, this is not going to work. Um, okay, well, it's pasting perfectly fine, so I can't really show you how I did that, but maybe if nope, it's not going to work. I can't. But so there's this really cool feature here. For example, if I wanted to separate the date into the date and the month, and I wanted to automate that, one of the really cool features in Excel is you highlight all of this, you go to data, go to text to column, and you can go delimited, and what we're going to select is a space. And now it's going to know that based on the space, it's separated out January from the 1st, right? So I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but I just wanted to have a method of showing you how to separate those out. The other part of that is really around the way that this is formatted, right? This is that example where it's not actually in date format. So you need to get it into date format. And so if it's general, Excel, the pivot table is not going to be able to read that this is the date, and it's not going to be able to understand that you want the dates together by month. So these are small things. I hope this helped. I hope this video tutorial helped you understand a little bit more about the P&L, about forecasting, about bookkeeping, and all of that. And if this was helpful, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and let me know what's going to be helpful for you in the future moving forward? What else do you want to see? What else do you want to know? Thank you.